and the Book of Enoch. Although both of these translations are suspect by certain scholars, you get in the Book of Jasher for about 60 minutes and you'll figure out very easily why the government-controlled churches removed it from the Old Testament. This is hardball, bare knuckles, in your face, the result of what happens when you start obeying rather than believing. The Jasher is $20. Enoch is 12. The two together. Fabulous stuff relating the Bible to you as a legal document as opposed to a religious document. And it closes with a reprint of Bill Strittmatter's explanation of the Bible as a civil government constitution, Christian constitution and public policy for the kingdom of heaven on earth. And it really demonstrates to you very quickly the difference between law and religion. The guts of the Bible Law Index are your responsibilities toward your fellow man, your responsibilities towards Yahweh, and it lays out the Old Testament and New Testament and just breaks it down as a law book. The Bible Law Index is $10. This is rescued from the memory hole in the United States history. This is Chaplains and Clergy of the American Revolution. This was printed in 1856. It was compiled by J.T. Headley. You will read the sermons preached during the American War of Independence. The American War of Independence was organized and operated out of the pulpits of the American colonies' churches. And these whorehouse operators out here today with their 501c3 IRS tax-exempt corporate status ain't never heard preaching like this, not ever. Pastor Muhlenberg opened a sermon in Pennsylvania with Romans 13, be subservient to the higher powers, they're ordained of God. 80 minutes later, he took off his clerical vestments, and underneath, he was wearing his Pennsylvania Regular Militia Major's uniform. He stood the men of the congregation up, he marched them out into the town square, he signed them up for General Washington's army. When Lord Cornwallis surrendered to George Washington, General Muhlenberg was a staff officer present at the surrender. And you just haven't dealt with preaching like this until you, pick this book up. We have a number of serious and dangerous and grim books on the table that show you what happens in your interfacing with our electronic Babylon. This is Life Without Usury. The reason the Arabs are the bad guys on TV today is because they have reintroduced Sharia banking. And Sharia banking is profit sharing only. There is no usury or interest on loans. There is no confiscation of collateral assets pledged against a loan of nothing if the lender defaults. And that's why every time you turn on the electric toilet, you're dealing with the Arabs as the bad guys. Life Without Usury is 10. This seminar is dedicated to my father who passed away about 3 weeks ago. This is his book, Unhealthy Food, Unhealthy People. My father died at age 90. He was a biochemist. For you ladies in the audience, the most radical and dangerous appliance in your home is your refrigerator. The problem in the United States is 80% of the food sold to you and me is stale by definition. And it is the byproducts of the ingestion of stale food that puts plaque into your arteries and initiates the cancer cells production in your body. Unhealthy Food, Unhealthy People is $15. Romance of the Wheat. This is 2 books in one. Past the yellow divider is her second book, The Upper Crust. This is bread making A to Z, the way your great-great-great-grandmother did it. And the secret to bread making is you must grind your own grain. If you are not grinding your own grain, you are creating glue. You might as well eat the box that the stuff came in your kitchen. If you grind your own grain and you soak the dough for 7 hours, which is completely explained in 3 different sections in this book, you turn glue into food. You'll notice the scripture says, "Give us this day our daily bread." And I submit to you that there is a biochemical reason for those exact words coming to us in English. To that, the bleaching of flour, North Dakota Agricultural College Government Agricultural Experiment Station, bulletin number 72, November 1906. Dated basically rules in the several states track the federal rules. I neglected to show you one of our best tools. In your information pack, you will find a page that says Training Videos You Can Use. And the training videos we have is one of the few products produced out of house. There is a notorious pro se litigant in Denver, Colorado. His name's Barry Lynn from the House of Smith. And he has produced with a TV outfit in Denver these two videos. The first one is Pro Se Legal Research. And this is an 85-minute tour of Denver, Colorado's largest law library. And it was professionally filmed by a TV studio. The second one is Winning with Court Rules. If I title it Winning with Civil Rules. This is a 2-hour tour of the rules of civil procedure by a licensed paralegal in Colorado. And what this tape will do for you is when they throw all these procedural gimmicks at you, you will know how to oppose them, and you'll also know how to do some of them on your own. With the civil rules video, we include 3.5 hours of our friend and associate Peggy Dadek from West Palm Beach, Florida. We had an Erwin Rommel seminar down in West Palm Beach, and this is Peggy's review of the civil rules and all of the ugly and dirty and nasty tricks that they will play on you. So I did want to get those on camera for the benefit of the tape audience. The two videos are $100. And as Sun Tzu said, all battles are won in the preparation. And these tools will take you a long way to being adequately prepared. And now we're back on deck with the Field Marshal himself, Michael H. Brown. Thank you.
All right, normally what I do on Sunday morning is I go back over and bring up all the things I should have told you the day before. And then, of course, there's a couple of refreshers. The right side of this board, we're going to get right back into the meat of this, but there are some things that we do need to go over. If you run into a problem, because some of you are going to be doing your own 372s, and if you run into the kind of crap that you run into in the Sixth Circuit with Boyce Martin and the rest of these idiots, what you do is you ask your congressman to file it for you. And one of two things will happen. Either somebody on his staff is going to write the offending party a letter and say, you know, what is this? You know, where did you want to explain yourself? Well, the whole idea here is to make life miserable for these people, the mosquito theory of judicial discipline. And if they start beginning to understand that it's easier just to file them like they should have done in the first place and give them docket numbers than to play all these cute games to try to make themselves look good to Congress, because that's all they're doing. That's one thing that can happen. The other thing that happens is you'll get some congressional staffer, because when you write to a congressman, you don't actually get the congressman. You get some jerk that works in the office normally, and some of them are jerks and some of them aren't. Well, if you get a jerk, what he'll tell you is to get a lawyer, and then he'll start sniveling about separation of powers. Well, that's when you're writing back. It's when you make the staffer's life miserable and say, look, in the first place, no lawyer has the nerve to do this. There are about 2,500 of these 372s, or there were 2,500 of them filed every year until we went on the offensive 2 years ago here. And out of that 2,500, 2 of them were filed by attorneys. Of course, now it numbers in the tens of thousands. It's the whole idea of just isolate and destroy. In other words, to destroy one federal judge's career at a time, then the others, they hear, they fear, and they straighten up. Separation of powers, we went over that yesterday. You just explained to the Congress, congressional staffer, that separation of powers appears nowhere in the Constitution, appears nowhere in the statute law, and here's the case site that you can look up. All right, in other words, this guy's going to understand real quick, uh-oh, he's dealing with somebody. Now, a little stunt that I thought about pulling, I just haven't got around to it yet, is when you get this runaround from somebody on a congressman's staff, find out who the head of the congressman's office is, and sue him under Bivens and the First Amendment because he's denying me the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. And when this clown sees his name on a docket number, he realizes all the work he's got to go through. He may get something done. Just haven't had to do it yet so far. Now, I want to congratulate you people. I'm proud of you people because when I called for volunteers yesterday for 372s, of all the seminars I've given, and I've given dozens, this group right here has the highest percentage of volunteers I have ever seen. Normally I only get about a third of the people. You people seem to be in a tremendous majority, okay? Has anybody done their case analysis that they want me to look at? Show of hands. 1, 2, okay. And what I want you to do at the end of this set is come up here, 50 words or less, put it on the table, let me take a look at it, I'll address it in the following hour. Now, I gave all of you a homework assignment last night. How many of you actually did it? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yeah, he forgot what it was. One of my star trainees. You never knew, okay? You didn't even know. Warriors, I'll tell you what, you people have gonads, but your attention span leaves a lot to be desired, okay? Now, again, let me remind you about Diane and the computer searches. If you have a particular question or anything like that, during the break, you come up to her and you say, I got a particular question, I need a particular statute looked up, I have a particular case I want taken care of, and then we'll go from there. Thurston, real quick.
Okay, you were talking about the congressman, and usually you run into the guy who's some college dropout who's working for the congressman. I do this all the time. So we find this guy working for the congressman, he doesn't know anything. Most of the time they don't read anything. So we're working to make our letters as short as possible and address the issue as quickly as possible within 1 page. 1 page has always got to be your target. If you can get a 1-page brief, they can't rewrite it. If you send them a 1-page letter, they won't avoid opening it up to do the work. Now, once you get resistance from that idiot, you move to the state supervisor. There's a supervisor over any and all offices of the senator or congressman.
I'm talking about a federal congressman.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. There's a state supervisor?
There's a state supervisor.
Okay.
Someone who supervises all of their offices within the state, not the offices in D.C.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
And then from there, once you pass by that person, who's usually a lawyer and sometimes knows what's going on and can sometimes help you, then you move to the chief of staff if that person is still resistant. From the chief of staff, you then go and try to get that chief of staff to take your issue into the congressman's office where he will give a direct answer. What I'm working with TaxGate and NITE is to get the congressman to give me a written position as to why he doesn't support the due process rights of his constituency. And then I post his picture up at denialofdueprocess.com, where if you go there now, you will see a nice, lovely picture of Senator Herbert Kohl of Wisconsin. And I intend to put every single congressman and senator's picture there who shows me that he's not interested in standing up for the due process rights of his constituency. The good guys get to go up at ruleoflaw.com. This 372 effort that I've been talking with you about and want to support you with, I want to put in at denialofdueprocess.com. And, of course, start listing the federal judges and the congressmen and the senators and their chiefs of staff who are resistant, and show the people these are the ones who are resisting you. It's not a hit list. It's not anything like that other list. This is about knowing who the players are, who's in the way. This is who you got to vote out. These are the people you got to apply pressure to. And when you talk about suing, you don't sue that little guy who's doing his job, because his job is to deflect from the congressman, deflect from the chief of staff, deflect from the state supervisor, and to avoid that 4-letter word that begins with a W and it has a K on the end with an O and R in the middle. So you push through to the top, exhaust your process with those people. Then, if you want to do the RICO with someone, who are you suing? The congressman, the senator, or all three in your state at once.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Now, this next is a website. This is the National Anti-Lawyer Political Party, www.antilawyer.org. I don't need to tell you a whole lot about it because I'm the national director, so you can have a pretty good idea where we're coming from, okay? In fact, we have a fellow named Joe Keller in St. Louis right now who is rapidly moving towards getting us on the ballot in Missouri. The whole idea of this is anybody goes down a ballot. I don't know if you're aware of how most people vote. They're so lazy, they just look at the first name. But if you have Republican, Democrat, and anti-lawyer, guess how many votes anti-lawyer is going to get, even if they don't know who in the dickens you are, okay? Now, this particular tie I'm wearing here, my wife's got some for sale over here, and the reason I wear this particular tie at all these gatherings is because the people I've trained, once they have graduated from the Erwin Rommel School, are entitled to wear the plaid of the Clan MacGregor. I don't care if you're Chinese, okay? Because what we're trying to do is, through the courtrooms of the United States, when somebody comes in wearing one of these, at some point, some judge is going to look at it and say, oh, crap, it's one of these Erwin Rommel guys, okay? A little aside here, one of the reasons that a lot of our stuff works is not because we study just law books, but if you get books on military history and business, you'll find that the people that you read about or the people who write the books on business have original ideas. Most lawyers have no original ideas. They're like the killylew bird, which flies backwards and doesn't look where it's going, it looks where it's been, okay? And if you want to learn how to think differently, these are two of the best type of books you can get. For example, one of the things you learn out of military history is what's called a force multiplier. For example, on a 372, if you launch one, well, it's not going to really go anywhere. It's kind of like a muzzle-loading musket. You load it, fire it, the guy closes with you, and you're toast. On the other hand, the difference between one person with a 372 and a whole bunch of us, it's called a force multiplier. Again, it's the difference between the muzzle loader and the machine gun. The machine gun is a force multiplier. You need less troops to use a machine gun and do the same amount of damage than you do with a whole series of muskets. Now, I want to get into some of these other cases here. And these citations, the reason I have them up here is because I do not have them in your course materials, because normally when I give one of these seminars, a lot of the things that I will bring up, I just discovered in 2 days or 2 weeks before the seminar myself. A lot of these things, in fact, I'm going to show you one that we just came up with in the last 30 days that puts a whole new spin when you get shafted by an appellate court. And this one here, this Green versus Seymour, the principle here, it's 59 Fed 3rd 1073. Go to page 1078. It's the 10th Circuit case out of 1995. What it tells you is a district court cannot review and reverse a decision of a court of appeals that is challenged in a civil rights suit. And this is normally why when you do a RICO against a circuit court of appeals, no district court's going to touch it. Not only are those his buddies, but there's precedent to support that a lower court cannot overrule a higher court. But if you get a 3-judge panel from another circuit, they're on an equal footing, they can give you some air. Now, the next one here, this case, Olson versus Hart, 965 Fed 2nd 940. Go to page 943. It's also a 10th Circuit case from 92. It tells you that arbitrary and capricious actions violate due process. In other words, if an administrative agency or court or anything like that is going by whim and caprice, that violates due process. I want you to look at a comparison here. This first case, they're giving you federal supplement sites. Federal supplement cases actually have no value as precedent. They're not what you call controlling case law. In fact, you'll even see cases that say they have no value as precedent, but they do act as a guide. The next one here has Supreme Court sites, and so the Supreme Court is supposed to issue rulings that the lower courts follow, which of course is not normally what they do. Lower courts, if it's a good Supreme Court decision, they'll water it down. If it's a bad Supreme Court decision, they'll enforce it unmercifully. Now, this next citation here, this is Agency Holding Corporation versus Malley Duff. It's 107 Supreme Court 2759. It's 1987. This is the case that tells you the RICO statute of limitations is 4 years. The next one here is the This particular case here, let's see, where are we? 155 Fed 3rd 500, comma 505, 506. It's a Fourth Circuit case. That's where we are right now. The Carolinas, the Virginias, and Maryland from 1998. The name of the case is Anderson versus Advancement, etc. of American Indians. And there's a real thorough discussion of RICO. And the reason you want to read this particular case and a real thorough discussion of RICO, because when you get around to filing a RICO against the Fourth Circuit itself, the judges in it, you don't want to make any mistakes. The next case here, this is a Fed sub case, and what it tells you, and this is actually a legitimate principle, is that your RICO claim must fail if the substantive claims are themselves deficient. This is Stewart versus Associates Consumer Discount Company, 1 Fed sub 2nd 469, comma 475, from the Eastern District of Pennsylvania in 1998. And what this is basically telling you, if you'll go back to Title 18, Section 1961, if you've charged somebody, say, with 3 counts of obstruction of justice, and the counts actually don't arise to the level of obstruction of justice, then the RICO complaint itself is toast. Now, this other case here, this 114 Supreme Court 996 from 1994, this is FDIC versus Meyer, and what it tells you is that constitutional claims are not cognizable on a Federal Tort Claims Act, and discretionary acts are not reviewable either. Federal tort claims, I'm going to show you how that works when we get through the RICO sections, but what you're going to find in many cases, as you found out in the Tapia case, is that quite often you can use something in place of a Bivens action and you'll get further with it because, like I also pointed out at the beginning of this seminar, the Supreme Court and even the lower courts rule upside down. In other words, they will take the statute over the Constitution. If the statute does not give them the authority to litigate a constitutional issue, the courts won't deal with it, which is actually bass-ackwards of the way it's supposed to be. Now, this statute down here, this is the Tucker Act. Normally, what you're going to find is that anything that you can bring under a Bivens action, you can bring either under the Tucker Act, and the statute is Title 28, United States Code, Section 1491, or you can bring it under the Federal Tort Claims Act. And if you get a chance, that's always the best way to do things. Now, that pretty well takes care of the house cleaning that I needed to do this morning and the introduction. Now we're going to go to the RICO section for the 10th Circuit. How many people here are from the 10th Circuit? Show of hands. 1. Okay. We're going to go through it anyway. Okay. And the reason is because this is judicial activism. This is a perfect example. This case is probably the best example you'll ever see. It hasn't been filed yet of a RICO and a petition for declaratory and injunctive relief to show you what this case illustrates is how to take a Circuit Court of Appeals case that you know is absolute crap and turn it upside down and smack all the jerks who are responsible. Let's go through the usual business. You're familiar with the jurisdiction. Of course, here's all the defendants listed. Then here's the facts. This guy got banged on a money laundering case. And fact is, he didn't launder anything. What actually happened is that he had set up a bank in on the Indian reservation. What he was going to do was do an offshore banking type operation inside the United States by parking it on an Indian reservation. And so the feds decided that, what this guy's doing is money laundering. Well, money laundering means you're trying to conceal something, and that's not what he was doing. I mean, there's a perfectly open trail on it, but what's happened is that there's been such a frenzy on these forfeitures that the prosecutors have taken right after the federal judges in bending and twisting the meaning of words and statutes and everything else just to arrive at a predetermined goal. If you've got $1 million, trust me on this one, as soon as the feds find out about it, they're going to figure out some way, by the misuse of language, by the twisting of statutes, by abuse of process, by misuse of legal procedure, they're going to find out some way to take it away from you. Now, This fellow here had several issues. He had the grand jury issue, which I'm not going to go over with you here because we're going to run out of time if we do. I mean, I could probably give you a 2-day seminar just on the grand jury. You'll get an idea. Starting on page 14, it shows you what was wrong with the indictment. But now we get down to page 15.